are you making the biggest prep mistakes without even knowing it? In 2025, prepping has become a massive trend, with nearly 74 million Americans spending over $11 billion, 0 cents on emergency supplies last year alone. With food prices climbing up to 4% in just the past year and disasters like hurricanes and blackouts making headlines, it's no surprise that families are rushing to stock their pantries. But here's the harsh reality. If you're hoarding the wrong foods, you're not prepared at all. In fact, you're wasting money and putting your family's safety at risk. Most people don't realize this. They'll keep buying the same useless items, thinking they're ready for anything. Spoiler alert, they're not. Today, we're exposing the 12 so-called survival foods that are nothing but a joke. Some are dangerous, others spoil too quickly, and a few are just plain useless. If any of these are in your pantry, it's time for a serious wake-up call. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to avoid and what smart preppers are stocking instead. Let's dive in and separate the smart from the not so smart. 1. The brown rice blunder. Brown rice might seem like a healthy, no-brainer choice for your emergency pantry, but it's actually one of the worst grains to stockpile. Why? Because it spoils fast. Unlike white rice, brown rice retains its natural oils in the bran layer, and those oils turn rancid in as little as 6 months to a year, even under ideal storage conditions. That means your pricey organic brown rice could become a smelly, oily mess just when you need it most. Official food storage guidelines even warn against stockpiling brown rice or whole wheat flour for long-term use due to their high oil content. The same goes for other healthy options like granola, whole grain flour, and nuts. On the flip side, white rice is a prepper's dream. Properly stored in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, white rice can last for decades. Yes, you read that right. 30 years or more. The Church of Latter-day Saints, known for their food storage expertise, recommends low-moisture staples like white rice, wheat, and beans for long-term survival. If you're worried about nutrition, remember, in a crisis, calories are king. You can always supplement with multivitamins or rotate in fresh foods when possible. If you absolutely must have brown rice, keep only a small amount rotated every 6-12 months, or store it in the freezer to extend its shelf life. But for long-term prepping, stick to white rice. It's cheaper, lasts longer, and won't turn into a rancid disaster. MRE madness, meals ready to eat. MREs are often hyped as the ultimate survival food. After all, if they're good enough for soldiers, they must be perfect for your emergency stash, right? Wrong. MREs are one of the most overrated and impractical foods you can stockpile. First, let's talk cost. A single case of 12 MREs can set you back anywhere from $70, 0 cents, or even more during times of panic buying. That's about $6, 0 cents to $12, 0 cents per meal. For the same price, you could buy bulk staples like rice and beans that provide dozens of meals. Smart preppers know that MREs are a budget buster, while bulk staples and freeze-dried foods offer far more value. Then there's the health factor. MREs are notorious for causing constipation, hence their nickname, meals refusing to exit. They're designed for soldiers who need nutrition without frequent bathroom breaks, so they're low in fiber and high in calories, around 1,200 and 1,300 per meal. While this might work in a combat zone, it's a recipe for discomfort if you're eating them at home during a crisis. Even the military advises against eating MREs for more than 21 days straight, as they can disrupt your gut health and lack the nutrients found in fresh food. And let's not forget their shelf life. MREs typically last only 3 to 5 years, far less than true long-term survival foods. MREs do have their place, such as in a 72-hour emergency kit or for short-term evacuations, but relying on them as your primary food source is a rookie mistake. Instead, invest in bulk staples like rice, beans, oats, and pasta, as well as high-quality freeze-dried meals. These options provide more calories per dollar, last longer, and are easier on your digestive system. 3. The nutty trail mix trap. Trail mix and nuts might seem like perfect survival foods, high in calories, packed with protein, and no cooking required, but here's the catch: they spoil fast. Nuts and seeds contain healthy fats, but those fats oxidize over time, turning rancid and ruining both the taste and nutrition. Most nuts have a maximum shelf life of 2-3 years under ideal conditions, and much less if stored at room temperature. Without proper storage, they can go stale or even make you sick. Trail mix is even worse. Unless vacuum sealed and frozen, the nuts go rancid, the dried fruit hardens or molds, and the chocolate develops an unappetizing white film known as bloom. Within a year, your once tasty snack could become a sticky, stale mess. And let's not forget the pests. Mice and squirrels love nuts and trail mix, and they'll chew through plastic bins to get to your stash. If you're not storing these items in metal or thick glass containers, you might find your emergency food devoured by rodents. That's not to say nuts are entirely useless. They're nutritious and calorie dense, which is great for survival if you can keep them fresh. The key is proper storage. Commercially canned nuts with oxygen absorbers or vacuum-sealed packages can extend shelf life, but even then, quality starts to decline after a few years. If you want to include nuts in your stockpile, rotate them every 6-12 months and consider freezing them to extend their life. Frozen nuts can last up to 3 years. For long-term prepping, focus on shelf-stable protein sources like canned meats, beans, or peanut butter powder. These options are more reliable and won't leave you with a pantry full of spoiled snacks. Or comfort foods that won't comfort you for long. Let's talk about junk food and candy. No, Twinkies don't have the magical ability to survive the apocalypse, despite what you might have heard. It's tempting to think that stocking up on chips, cookies, and candy bars is a good idea for emergencies. After all, when panic sets in, people often grab comfort foods like they're prepping for a third-grade slumber party. But here's the harsh truth. Junk food is a terrible choice for long-term survival. Sure, comfort foods can provide a quick morale boost during tough times, but relying on them as a staple in your emergency stockpile is a rookie mistake. Some preppers even believe the myth that certain junk foods like Twinkies can last forever. Spoiler alert, they don't. Twinkies have an official shelf life of about 25 to 45 days. That's right, less than 2 months. After that, they go stale, and the filling can grow mold or even ferment. The whole Twinkies will survive a nuclear winter idea. It started as a joke and somehow turned into an urban legend. And it's not just Twinkies. Chocolate bars can melt or develop a white chalky coating called bloom if stored in hot conditions. Potato chips? They'll go stale or rancid within a few months, and their bulky bags take up a lot of space for very few calories. Sugary candies, like gummy bears, can melt into a sticky, unappetizing blob in warm weather. Even hard candies, which last longer, can absorb moisture over time and become sticky or unusable. Let's not forget the nutritional downside. Living on chips and candy during a crisis will wreak havoc on your body. You'll experience sugar spikes and crashes, zero protein intake, and an unquenchable thirst from all that salt. Those salty snacks will have you chugging your precious water supply, which is the last thing you want in a survival situation. Now, this doesn't mean you should avoid comfort foods entirely. Experts actually recommend keeping a small stash of sweets or chocolate to lift your spirits during tough times. A little treat can go a long way in boosting morale, but the key is moderation. Don't fill your bunker with Doritos and Snickers bars thinking you'll thrive on them. You won't. Instead, limit your comfort foods to a small portion of your stockpile and rotate them every 6 to 12 months. Enjoy them as they near expiration. You've earned it. For the best results, choose candies that last longer, like peppermints or Jolly Ranchers, over items that melt or spoil easily. But remember, your main focus should be on real nutrition. Stock up on complex carbs, proteins, and healthy fats. Save the Oreos for a short-term power outage when you just need a mental pick-me-up. In a long-term emergency, your body needs fuel, not fluff. 5. The freezer fantasy, why frozen food isn't a survival plan. If your emergency food plan revolves around a freezer full of steaks, frozen veggies, and Costco burritos, I've got some bad news for you. Unless you have a reliable off-grid power source, your freezer is one power outage away from becoming a smelly, useless mess. Many people learned this the hard way during events like the Texas winter storm of 2021, where extended blackouts left millions without power for days. Here's the reality. A full freezer can keep food cold for about 48 hours after the power goes out, if you don't open it. A half-full freezer, you're looking at closer to 24 hours. After that, the temperature rises into the danger zone and your food starts to spoil. In a disaster scenario, 48 hours can pass in the blink of an eye. Imagine the frustration of losing hundreds of dollars worth of food when you need it most. Some people think they'll just cook everything on the grill if the power goes out. While that's a decent short-term solution, it's not practical for long-term emergencies. Unless you can cook 40 pounds of meat in one go or have a community to share with, you're essentially turning your long-term food supply into a one-day barbecue. And what happens if you're forced to evacuate? You're not hauling a freezer's worth of food into your car. If you return home after a disaster, you might find a dripping, stinking mess where your freezer used to be. Another issue is the reliance on electricity. Freezers need power, and in a crisis, that often means running a generator. But is it worth burning through your limited fuel supply just to keep some frozen peas and Hot Pockets cold? Probably not. Dumb preppers overload their freezers because it's easy and convenient in everyday life, but emergency prepping is about shelf-stable foods, items that can survive at room temperature. This doesn't mean you should avoid freezing food altogether. A stock freezer is great for normal times and short outages, but don't count on it as your primary emergency food source. Smart preppers have a plan for their freezer items. For example, you can can or dehydrate meats before they spoil if a storm is looming. Or if you have the budget, invest in a solar setup to keep your freezer running during extended outages. To minimize losses, keep thermometers in your fridge and freezer. If the temperature rises above 40 degrees, you'll know the food is no longer safe to eat. Have coolers and ice packs on hand to transfer freezer items if needed. In some cases, you can use ice or snow to buy more time. The bottom line, don't let your freezer be a single point of failure in your food supply. Use it for short-term storage, but focus your long-term stockpile on shelf-stable options. 6. The raw staple trap: beans, pasta, and grains without a plan. Beans, pasta, and grains are often held as the holy trinity of survival foods, and for good reason. They're cheap, nutritious, and can last for decades when stored properly. But here's the catch: if you can't cook them, they're useless. It sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people hoard massive bags of dried beans, rice, and pasta without considering the fuel, water, and time required to prepare them. In a power outage or emergency, cooking can be a luxury. If you don't have an off-grid stove, plenty of fuel, and a reliable water source, you might find yourself staring at buckets of raw rice and beans that you can't eat. FEMA's emergency food guidelines specifically recommend choosing foods that require no refrigeration, water, or special preparation. Why? Because in many disaster scenarios, clean water and power are scarce. Dried beans are fantastic if you can boil them for 2 hours. But if you're under a boil water advisory or trying to conserve propane, those rock-hard beans are a poor choice. Even pasta, which cooks faster, requires a rolling boil and a lot of water, which then gets discarded. If water is precious, that's not ideal. Time and labor are other factors to consider. In a crisis, you might be dealing with injuries, emergencies, or other tasks. Spending hours tending a cook fire and babysitting a pot of beans might not be feasible. And if you have to evacuate, carrying a heavy sack of dried beans isn't exactly convenient. This doesn't mean you should avoid raw staples altogether. They're an essential part of any long-term food storage plan, but you need to store the means to cook them as well. That includes a camp stove, rocket stove, or other off-grid cooking method, along with plenty of fuel and extra water. Hey, if you haven't practiced cooking your stored foods in a grid-down simulation, you're not fully prepared. For added flexibility, stock some just-add hot water foods like instant rice, quick oats, or dehydrated meals. These require minimal fuel and water, making them lifesavers when resources are scarce. Canned beans, while heavier, can be eaten straight from the can if needed and heat up quickly. Smart preppers take a balanced approach. They stock raw staples for long-term sustainability, but also include easy-to-cook options and ready-to-eat foods for emergencies. They invest in tools like thermal cookers or pressure cookers to reduce fuel usage and ensure they can prepare meals efficiently. The key is flexibility. Don't pin your survival on the assumption that you'll always have the time, water, and fuel to cook a 10-bean stew. Plan for every scenario and you'll be ready for whatever comes your way. 7. Supersized containers, a recipe for waste. Buying in bulk might seem like a smart move for your wallet, but when it comes to survival prepping, those jumbo-sized containers can quickly turn into a disaster. Think about those massive gallon jars of mayonnaise, industrial-sized cans of tomato sauce, or the enormous jug of soy sauce you snag from the wholesale club. In normal times, you open one, use a little, and store the rest in the fridge, but in a long-term emergency where refrigeration might not be an option, these oversized containers can become a liability. Once opened, these giant containers of food are on a ticking clock. Without refrigeration, perishables like mayonnaise or ketchup can spoil in hours, especially in warm weather. Even in cooler conditions, you might only get a day or two before bacteria take over. That gallon of mayo you thought was a steal, it could end up in the trash, along with your hard-earned money. The problem with bulk containers is that they're designed for large groups, not individual households. Unless you're feeding an army, you'll struggle to consume the contents before they spoil. For instance, a tin can of chili or peaches contains about 3 quarts of food. Without refrigeration, you'd need to eat it all in one sitting or risk wasting it. And let's be honest, no one wants to host a post-apocalypse block party just to finish off a giant can of fruit cocktail. Another issue is cross-contamination. A giant jar of peanut butter might seem convenient, but every time someone dips in with a dirty spoon or introduces crumbs, the entire jar is at risk of contamination. Smaller containers are not only more practical, but also safer. If one gets spoiled, the rest of your stash remains untouched. When it comes to survival prepping, smaller is smarter. Opt for individual-sized cans or jars that you can consume in one meal or day. For example, instead of a 1-gallon can of fruit, stock up on 4 quart-sized cans. It might cost a bit more up front, but it's worth it to avoid waste. And if you do have bulk items, have a plan to repack leftovers into smaller airtight containers. Mason jars can be a lifesaver for this purpose, especially in cold weather when you can store them outside. The bottom line? Don't open more than you can eat in the immediate term. Wasted food equals wasted resources, and in a survival situation, that's a risk you can't afford to take. 8. Ramen overload, the salt bomb trap. Instant noodles might be the go-to food for broke college students, but relying on them as a cornerstone of your survival plan is a recipe for disaster. Sure, they're cheap, shelf-stable, and easy to prepare, but they're also nutritional landmines. A single block of ramen is loaded with over 500 milligrams of sodium, more than half your daily limit, and offers little more than refined carbs and a smidge of fat. If you think you can survive on ramen alone, think again. First, let's talk about water. Instant noodles require water and heat to prepare, both of which might be in short supply during an emergency. But even if you have the means to cook them, the nutritional shortcomings of ramen will catch up with you. A diet heavy in instant noodles can lead to severe health issues. Even if you're consuming enough calories, the lack of protein, fiber, and essential vitamins will leave you feeling weak, sluggish, and malnourished. Excessive sodium can cause dehydration and even swelling, which is the last thing you need when water is scarce. Then there's appetite fatigue. Imagine eating plain ramen for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. After a few days, you'd probably rather go hungry. And let's not forget that ramen noodles don't last forever. Despite their long shelf life, the oil used in their production can go rancid after 24 months. Ever opened an old pack of ramen and noticed a weird smell or yellow-orange noodles? That's the oil breaking down. If you're a noodle lover, consider alternatives like soba or rice noodles, which are oil-free and have a longer shelf life. Pair them with low-sodium bouillon or real stock to make a healthier broth. Add canned vegetables or freeze-dried protein to create a balanced meal. And if you do stock ramen, rotate your supply regularly and supplement it with other quick-cook staples like instant rice, couscous, or oatmeal. The key takeaway: variety and nutrition matter. A case of ramen is fine as a small part of your stash, but don't let it dominate your pantry. Balance is crucial, or you'll find yourself battling high blood pressure and malnutrition instead of surviving. 9 overhyped survival food kits, buckets of disappointment. You've seen the ads. 1 month survival food bucket for just $299, 0 cents, 25 years shelf life. Act now. These prepackaged emergency food kits promise peace of mind, but many are little more than overpriced scams. They prey on fear and convenience, offering a one-size-fits-all solution that often falls short in quality, nutrition, and value. One of the biggest issues with these kits is their deceptive marketing. A bucket might boast 300 servings, but a closer look reveals that many of those servings are sugary drink mixes or tiny side dishes. The total calorie count for the entire kit might be as low as 25,000 calories, barely enough for 800 calories a day over a month. For reference, the average adult needs at least 2,000 calories a day and even more in a survival situation. Essentially, these kits are starvation diets in disguise. The cost is another red flag. You could be paying 5 to 10 times more per calorie than if you assembled your own pantry. Why? Because you're not just buying food, you're paying for packaging, marketing, and profit margins. During times of panic, some companies even jack up their prices, exploiting people's fears. Taste and preparation are also major concerns. Some of these long-term storage meals are so bland or unappetizing that you'd struggle to eat them even when hungry. Others require lengthy cooking times, which can be a deal breaker in an emergency. And don't be fooled by labels like organic or non-GMO. Unless certified, these claims are often meaningless marketing ploys. So what's the smart move? If you're considering a prepackaged kit, do your homework. Look for kits that provide at least 2,000 calories and 50 grams of protein per day. Read reviews, buy sample packs, and taste test the food before committing. Better yet, take a DIY approach. Purchase bulk freeze-dried ingredients and assemble your own meal plan. This way, you know exactly what you're getting and can tailor your stash to your needs. And if you do buy a commercial bucket, don't just stash it away and forget about it. Open a pouch, try it out, and make sure it meets your expectations. The last thing you want is to rely on a bucket of disappointment when it matters most. 10. Stockpiling foods your family despises. One of the most overlooked mistakes in prepping is hoarding foods that your family simply won't eat. It might seem like common sense, but in the rush to prepare for emergencies, many people stockpile items they think they should have rather than foods they actually enjoy. Imagine buying 50 cans of sardines because they're packed with omega-3s and protein, only to realize your kids gag at the mere sight of them, or storing powdered milk and wheat berries when no one in your household has ever baked bread or drunk anything but fresh milk. In a crisis, comfort and familiarity matter more than you think. As any experienced prepper will tell you, picky eaters don't magically become less picky just because it's an emergency. Stress levels will already be through the roof, and forcing down foods you hate only makes things worse. Morale is a critical factor in survival, and choking down unappetizing meals can drain it fast. Plus, there's a practical issue: rotation. A golden rule of prepping is to store what you eat and eat what you store. If you stockpile foods your family doesn't normally consume, you'll be reluctant to rotate them into your regular meals. This leads to expired food, wasted money, and a stockpile that's more of a liability than an asset. There's a cautionary tale about a family that stored dozens of cans of plain spinach because they thought it was a healthy choice. When the time came to eat it, the kids refused after one whiff, and even the parents could barely stomach it. They had never eaten canned spinach before and discovered at the worst possible moment that they hated it. Don't let this be you. If your family doesn't touch Spam or Vienna sausages in normal times, don't assume desperation will make them palatable. While true starvation might force someone to eat anything, food aversions can cause people, especially children and the elderly, to eat less than they need, leading to weakness or illness even when food is available. Sudden dietary changes can also wreak havoc on your digestive system. If you rarely eat beans and suddenly start consuming them daily, expect some unpleasant gastrointestinal surprises. Gradually incorporating your stored foods into your regular diet not only helps with rotation, but also keeps your body adapted to those foods. The smart prepper tailors their stockpile to their household's tastes and needs. Includes some comfort foods to make crisis meals feel more normal. If your kids love mac and cheese, stock up on it along with shelf-stable milk and butter powder. If you're a coffee addict, make sure you have enough coffee to avoid withdrawal headaches during an already stressful time. Don't forget treats like hard candy or brownie mix. They can be morale boosters when everything else feels bleak. What should you do? Audit your pantry. Does it contain foods you eat regularly? If not, start integrating those emergency items into your meals now. Test out recipes using your stored foods and involve your family in taste tests. Better to find out now that your son hates freeze-dried stroganoff than during a crisis when it's the only option. Also, consider dietary restrictions. If someone in your household is gluten-free, diabetic, or allergic to certain foods, your stockpile must accommodate those needs. And don't forget your pets. They can't survive on rice and beans. Ultimately, food is more than just fuel. It's a source of comfort and tradition. In a disaster, a familiar meal or a small treat can lift spirits immeasurably. Don't deprive yourself of that by stockpiling foods no one wants to eat. 11. The bottled water blunder. Water isn't technically a food, but it's the most critical survival resource. Yet many people make the mistake of relying solely on flats of bottled water, thinking they're set for an emergency. While having some bottled water on hand is fine for short-term use, depending on it as your primary water source is inefficient, expensive, and impractical for long-term survival. First, let's talk cost. Bottled water is outrageously overpriced compared to tap water. You're essentially paying for convenience, and in many cases, that pure bottled water is just filtered tap water anyway. The studies have even found that bottled water often contains microscopic plastic particles, on average about 240,000 fragments per liter. Over time, these nanoplastics can accumulate in your body, potentially causing health issues, not exactly what you want to rely on in a crisis. Then there's the issue of storage. Those flimsy plastic bottles are prone to leaks and degradation, especially if stored in heat. Ever left a case of water in your garage during the summer? The water starts tasting like chemicals because the plastic leaches into it. While bottled water doesn't technically expire, it can absorb odors and develop an off taste over time. And let's not forget the sheer volume you'd need. FEMA recommends at least 1 gallon of water per person per day. For a family of 4, that's 28 gallons for just 1 week, about 106 1-liter bottles. Multiply that for a month, and you're looking at a mountain of plastic. A smarter approach is to invest in larger food-grade water containers. Options like 5-gallon jerry cans, 55-gallon drums, or even DIY-filled bottles are far more practical. Treat stored tap water with unscented bleach or water preserver concentrates to extend its shelf life. Keep containers in a cool, dark place and rotate them every 6-12 months if untreated. And don't forget a quality water filter. A gravity-fed filter like a Berkey or Sawyer can turn questionable water into safe drinking water, giving you a backup plan if your stored supply runs out. Lastly, don't make the mistake of thinking other beverages can replace water. Sodas, sparkling water, and energy drinks don't hydrate you as effectively and can even contribute to dehydration due to their sugar and caffeine content. Water is life. Treat it as the priority it is. 12. Sugary drinks and energy drinks. Liquid regret. In a survival situation, staying alert and energized is crucial, but relying on sodas and energy drinks as your go-to beverages is a rookie mistake. While they might give you a quick sugar rush or caffeine buzz, The inevitable crash will leave you feeling worse off. These drinks are essentially liquid candy, offering little to no nutritional value and actually contributing to dehydration. Sugary drinks like soda are loaded with high fructose corn syrup, which can make you thirstier and cause energy crashes. Caffeine, while helpful in moderation, is a diuretic and can exacerbate dehydration. And let's not forget the shelf life. While regular sodas can last a while if sealed, they eventually go flat and taste awful. Diet sodas are even worse, as artificial sweeteners like aspartame break down over time, leaving a bitter chemical taste. Energy drinks are even more problematic. A single can contain upwards of 50 grams of sugar and a hefty dose of caffeine. While they might help you power through a tough day, the long-term effects can include jitters, heart palpitations, and anxiety, none of which you want during a crisis. Plus, they're bulky and take up valuable storage space that could be used for water or real food. Instead of stockpiling sugary drinks, focus on storing tea or coffee. Both are lightweight, long-lasting, and can provide a caffeine boost without the sugar crash. And if you're a soda lover, consider keeping a small stash for morale purposes, but don't rely on it as a hydration source. In a survival scenario, your body needs hydration and nutrition, not empty calories and stimulants. Plan wisely and don't let liquid candy take up space in your emergency stash.